Women in the Wild is the third book this year from the Indian Pitta imprint that was launched last year in partnership with Juggernaut Books. Our aim is very simple. We want to bring out books on birds and wildlife and natural history that go beyond field guides. Field guides are important books, but we feel the need to have books that go beyond field guides to explore landscapes, understand ecosystems, and human interactions that touch the lives of birds and wildlife. And this, I think, the Women in the Wild is a book that was conceived very early off in our cycle, and I'm really pleased that we are here in Bangalore to launch the book. And this book, as you saw from the short film, is an anthology of essays on some of India's wildlife biologists. And some of them are here, along with some of the writers who penned the pieces, to talk about women in wildlife in India. So without any further talk, I'd like to invite this evening's panelists to the stage. Please come, and we'll have a quick release of the book before we launch into the panel discussion. Please, J Vijaya is here. She's the managing trustee of the Madras Crocodile Bank Trust. Dr. Ghazala Shabuddin, Senior Adjunct Fellow, A.T. and Visiting Professor, Ashoka University. Dr. Uma Ramakrishnan, Molecular Ecologist and Professor, Senior Fellow, DBT Wellcome Trust, India Alliance, National Center for Biological Sciences, Bangalore. Dr. Vidya Atreya, Director, Wildlife Conservation Society, India. Dr. Divya Karnad, Assistant Professor, Department of Environmental Studies, Ashoka University, and co-founder in Season Fish. Danusha Kavalkar, PhD Scholar, Salim Ali Center for Ornithology and Natural History, Coimbatore. And Purva Warrior, Conservation and Science Editor, Wildlife Conservation Trust. Let me start with the cover, because that's the photo that hooked me and sort of led to this book. And I have a little story here to tell you. I saw this picture years ago, and I think it was in Sanctuary magazine, and I think Viji's vitality, that intelligence, it was a complete hook that caught me, and I've been wanting to know more about her ever since. And that was the genesis for starting this process to begin this and create this book, Women in the Wild. So as our cover girl, it seems right to sort of start with a question on Viji, and I want to ask this of Zai, who not only wrote the essay, but also took this lovely, lovely photo. And I think the question that I'd like to ask you, Zai, is, what do you think was Viji's greatest contribution to wildlife sciences? Not just looking at her accomplishments, but what she sort of stood for.
So Viji, of course, is known mostly for the rediscovery of the cane turtle after 72 years of people thinking that the species was extinct. And it took a lot of work, a lot of leech bites and other forest adventures for her to do that. Just incidentally, that was not her only discovery. There were things that she was constantly dialoguing with people like Rom, Mike Ewert, Ed Moll at the Snake Park and then at the Croc Bank, and finding out all kinds of fascinating things about freshwater turtles, their biology, natural history, habits, distribution. And I remember one of these was the temperature and weather needs for freshwater turtle egg hatching, right? So that was one of the things. But, apart from that, I've been thinking about Viji a lot, of course, during the process of this book coming together. And Anita, thank you very much for doing this. I think it's a milestone for women field biologists in the country. So at that time, in the maybe early to mid-80s, the Croc Bank was at the helm of herpetological studies in the country, conservation work, and we were already making a very conscious effort to hire women, which I think we should all keep in mind even today. It's happening, but not to the extent it should, I think. But, you know, when you have a person like Viji on a team, the ripples of that passion, you know, and that motivation really spread around. And it really, really strengthened our team to have her there. And that kind of role model is so important for any conservation work, because that's what drives us. I mean, we're certainly not going to make money or you know, anything like that. And I think that's what Viji did for us. And it wasn't just for us, it was for herpetology, for conservation in the country. So her role was actually much bigger than what she did in the field or what she discovered, you know, through her lab work at the Croc Bank. And a number of people, men and women, boys and girls, have talked about how inspiring it was to work with her, to watch her. And, you know, then you took, when we're all imitators, right? We imitate all the time. Somebody we admire, someone we look up to as a role model. We do what we feel they are doing. And I think that happened a lot, you know, her discipline, her focus on her work, and she just enjoyed it so much. And it was so cruel that her life was cut down so soon, and she died so young.
True. And I think one thing that I think until her struggles towards her end, I think she was someone who really stood up for herself. And that's the thought I just want to take forward, because for many women who choose wildlife as a profession, life is full of tough choices, right? And I turn now to Ghazala, because I think you've had and you successfully made many tough choices, I think, from the choice of profession, then down to choosing to work as an independent researcher rather than work for an organization. So would you like to talk a little bit about, you know, how it is to make tough choices in a profession like this?
Oh, well, thanks for that, you know, successfully commandeering position of an ecologist. Well, I don't know if that's true, but I mean, I think everyone has to make choices. And for me, I really don't remember having to choose this profession. It just came to me and I just followed, and I went with the flow. I just did one thing after another and did what I had to. But of course, things have a trade-off. And you know, choosing this profession isn't easy. There are trade-offs like, you know, job security, financial security. You do need a supportive family if you are going to do this, both to tolerate your long absences from home, as well as support you when you're not earning enough. So yeah, there are choices, but I think most of the biologists here, particularly the women, just make this choice just out of passion. So it comes easily. On the other hand, being an independent biologist hasn't been easy. It was kind of forced on me, you know, by my family circumstances. And but once I went along that road, I found that it had certain advantages. For one thing, you're not tied to any one institution. You don't have to toe the institutional line. For instance, when you take a stand on an environmental issue, you don't really have to listen to anybody. You can take your own, you know, you can have your own opinion and write about it freely in social media, at least till now. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But it's been good so far. It's been really good. And the other thing is that you're not saddled down with administrative responsibilities. So, for instance, I don't remember, you know, ever being in a meeting where I didn't want to be. You know, I've never... So all those of you here with whom I've had a meeting, you should feel really privileged because I've had a meeting on Zoom or personally with you. You know, I can choose the projects I want to work on. I can choose to be part or not be part of certain programs. I can be an environmental advocate the way I want to do it. But as I said earlier, it's a trade-off, and you have to choose carefully. And you have to choose your spouse very carefully.
That's one way to break the mold, so to speak, right, and to make the choice. But when talking about breaking the mold, and that's what I want to ask next, really to both Uma and to Vidya. And trust me, we're not seated like this in some grand design, but it just happens so that. And both of you work with charismatic species, right? Leopards, tigers. And within what I think Prerna Bindra wrote really well, and when she said that in the macho and highly territorial realm of large carnivore conservation. So, how does one break the mold and break into this old boys club?
I guess I don't think I've broken into any old boys club, and I don't even want to. I don't want to break into any old boys club. I think that, I agree. It's about, like, who is someone else to tell me that you should not work on tigers, or you should work on something, or you should do, like, 24/7 field work, or you should not do genetics, or you should do it this way. Whatever. Like, if I'm interested in something, as long as I can take people along, get it going, I don't think it really matters. So there are a lot of barriers, and there are a lot of gatekeepers. And the gatekeepers, you just kind of ignore them. Bureaucracies like water, it just flows and flows and flows. It's nobody's fault, right? So I think don't take it personally, and just follow what you're interested in. If it happens to be you're interested in tigers, that's what it is. If it happens to be a rusty spotted cat, that's what it is. Or a bird or a plant. It's just what you're curious about. For me personally, I feel like, I know there's a lot of people who say, oh, these, charismatic megavertebrates, everyone's attracted to them. But you know what? There should be good data on everything. And conservation decisions should be based on evidence. And, I think it's important to have good data for the tiger as well. Thanks.
The same question for me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think I thought, I knew there was a, what did you call it? Old boys club. Yeah. Old boys club, but I think there are enough of other old boys who also help you in your journey. And I think that was really useful for me. And I guess now I'm old enough to also say that I did not get as much support from the males in my own field. Very strangely, I got a lot of support from the forest department that I was working with.
Okay.
And I think that was because I started working with them, and I had my own colleagues not believing that leopards live in croplands. So I think Ravi is here, and he was, I think, the first person to show the collaring data, which showed that these animals actually live among people. And I think him saying it, not that I'm calling you old, Ravi, but I think it made a lot of difference, because he was a person of repute and he showed it, So I think there are enough people who help you. Right. And I think it's just our role then, as, we become older, to remember that we shouldn't fall in the same trap.
True. Gender can be, okay. It does not have to be, as you said, treated as an issue at all. But I think there are situations where I think it does create or brings in nuances into conversations where it should not have otherwise created any complications. And I think that's where I'm turning to Divya to really ask her, because she does a lot of field work with traditional fishing communities. And how does gender or being a woman, impact these interactions, and does it impact them?
I would say that, gender impacted my life in the sense of I was really inspired by the women from the fishing communities. Growing up in a city, I think in any Indian city, as a woman, you tend to have a lot of not very nice interactions with people, especially on public transport and things like that. And that's where I think the fisher women have really, really helped me. I could never complain to the bus conductor, but I could definitely complain to the akkas who were sitting there with their big, piles of fish. And seeing them actually was a huge inspiration, because here were these women, supposedly so many things going against them, and they were just going about their business and doing whatever they needed to do to keep their houses running and to keep their businesses going. And they were willing to take time out to, protect people like me on a random bus on a day when they were very busy. I mean, they were off to work. So to, be there and be inspired by them, and then at some point to go back as a researcher and work with these communities was like, taking it a full circle, because at that point it was also these fishing communities seeing other opportunities, looking for ways to do different things. And here I was as a researcher, and there was actually this interview that I was doing with a fisherman where he asked me why I was there and what I was trying to do. And I said I was doing this research for my PhD. And he was like, really? One can do that? And so then he brought his daughter out to meet me, because he was like, maybe she should do something like this. So I think it's just a back and forth. I don't think it's like a one-way street in terms of who is inspiring whom, but definitely there should be more women out there to inspire each other.
I think that I think a lot of you who are been in the field for a longer time, I think you're definitely inspiring for, I think, the younger group of field biologists who are coming up. And I think Purva, who wrote the piece on breaking new ground on the younger biologists, and I know we had a lot of conversations about, can we write about her? Can we write about her? And we said, like, no, we actually have a word limit, and we actually have to bring this book out, so we can only choose 3 or 4 profiles, and we would love to do more, but the point I'm coming to, and the question I'm asking is, tell us something more, Purva, about the kind of scope and diversity of work that you saw among the women you met, and what are the kind of common threads that unite their work? Yeah.
Thank you, Anita, for the question and the book. I think this is a great, these are very exciting times for wildlife research. I think, what I understood from the work that these 4 women and others as well, whom I know of, is that the wildlife research and conservation research is becoming more participatory, interdisciplinary, and community-oriented. That's the common threads that I found in all these stories. And just my chapter, the final chapter, where amazing women like Dhanusha is featured, these 4 wildlife biologists. This chapter is a microcosm of the wide and diverse scope of the work that these women are doing. I mean, from cave biology to turtle biology to bioacoustics. So I think the fact that we faced this problem of narrowing down to just 4 people, I think that just says a lot. And it also tells us that there are so many more women whose stories and whose work needs to be recognized and told. And yeah, that's about it.
And that's what, yeah, that's true. And I think Dhanusha is among the people who's profiled in that final chapter. And I think as somebody who's young and in the field, and the question that I was thinking about what I should ask you, which should be illuminating for this discussion, and what the thought that came back to me was the importance of mentorship, and how important is that, and more importantly, does it necessarily have to be women for women?
So initially, when you sent me the email with the question, I was like amazed that whether I'm too young to answer this question or, so yeah. So it's just been around 6 years that I'm in this field, and because you mentioned that there was a word limit, so I didn't mention one thing to Purva was I am a social work graduate. So when I was working with the tribal communities during my graduation, and I wanted to have a wildlife perspective, and it was like shifting a career. So I had a mentor back then, and what I remember about that mentoring thing is whenever I had a self-doubt thing about myself, there was always some voice who was saying, "No, Dhanusha, you can do it, and if you believe in yourself that you are making a right choice, then you should go for it." So, for the young researchers out there, the most important thing for us is we need a mentor who'll always have our back. Whether it's male or female, somebody should say, "Yaar, do whatever you want, main hu saath mein," type thing. So, yeah, and most importantly, whether it is male mentor or female mentor, the most important thing what I faced is the mentor should be approachable. I mean, I should be able to call that person at any point of time, day, night, and should tell my problems and should be able to discuss. The second thing what I've seen is learning. So it's whether males or female, I've worked with both. So it's most important is we should learn from, I mean, both the genders. And yeah, because during this journey of 5 years, I've mostly got males, but yeah, they were empathetic, and I'm very, very thankful to them that they were empathetic during this journey. But yeah, if we would talk about women to men mentorship, it would be really great. I mean, I don't have to explain that person a lot. So I mean, female to female is a different bonding in the end. But then, for example, I wanted to study biospeleology and wanted to have an expertise in it. So in India, there are no female speleologists working. So I mean, sometimes it is not out of choice that we have to go to a female mentor or a male mentor. So if I wanted to become a speleologist, availability was also the thing, like it happens with wildlife too. Yeah.
I think a very fair point. And I think for those of us, and I had to look up the word too, as to she studies cave forms and I think karst systems. Yeah. So it's a fascinating field. And we saw some wonderful footage from her work in the video earlier on. So what I think, Dhanusha, what you're saying is gender is not necessarily the framework through which you see mentorship. But I think there are still some larger questions here, which I want to sort of open up to the whole panel for all of you to weigh in on, is on why is wildlife sciences, and if so, and you can question the question itself, why is it still the road less traveled for women?
Well, it's definitely still the road less traveled. But all I can say is everyone looks at me because I'm the oldest one here.
Okay.
So unfair. But all I can say is that it's certainly not as less traveled as it was when, in the 70s when we started working in the field and, I started doing the little bit of field work that I've done, very superficial, but I was part of that group. And because it's such a small space, you sort of knew everyone there was in it. In the country. And really, like when you visited a place like Zoological Survey or IISC, it was all beards and mustaches. I mean, really, there were no women. If you saw a woman, it was, you'd assume she was working in the office. It's really changed, but it has to keep going in that direction. And I think these kinds of conversations and, get-togethers and this book, I say again, hopefully will make a big difference. I'd also like to add a point that I think many of you didn't agree with, but I'd like to say it anyway and become unpopular, even more unpopular. Is that, maybe we should think about setting aside a certain number of places for women in scientific institutions. I think the time has come to really look at that, because when you look at the achievements, I mean, this is just a molecule of it. It's so vast and such amazing work is being done. And why shouldn't more women be given this sort of opportunity?
Can I just, it's going to be a time series now. I think by the time the 90s came around, we had a lot more women in this field. I remember my class at the Pondicherry School of Ecology was almost 60% women, and other people on this panel would attest to that. So it's getting better and better. Actually, I think in the government institutions, it might be going in the reverse direction. For instance, if you look at Wildlife Institute of India, it's really male-dominated, even now. So I don't know if it's a systemic thing or it just happens, the selections happen like that. So, I mean, it could be something else going on there.
Can I just comment about, because you talked about the government institutes, which is where I come from. Actually, because of age restrictions, I think a lot of women lose out because a lot of jobs have age restrictions of 35, and sometimes it's difficult in general for people in wildlife, because a lot of times the studies take really long, and sometimes people come to this field after, doing other things. And so we have a lot of these age restrictions, which makes it very difficult.
Not a pattern, but actually just a matter of things taking their course. Yeah. What about I'd like to hear what the younger biologists have to say, because what is your perspective that is wildlife sciences still an outlier choice? Is it still did you still have to do a lot of explaining back home when you had to say when you started into this field?
So, my father is here. So,
All right.
so initially it was a struggle, but my grandmother and mother always had my back. But then sooner when I brought my merit cards, I got this, got that, I got a tiger in my camera traversing. So my father was then convinced, okay, my daughter is doing something, brave thing. And then he suddenly was very proud of me. And then the journey became easy, But when it comes to institutions, so yeah, it is no longer a road less traveled. I'm in SACON since 5 years, and I've seen that 70 to 80% recruitments in junior researchers and senior research are females. But then, like I said, the attitude of PIs, the empathizing attitude is lacking. So many times they drop out. After a year doing wildlife biology, they drop out and join some EIA firm or anything else, which is more comfortable. So that point, the dropout rates, I don't know whether it's a right word or not, but that is growing in the young researchers. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a good sort of time to sort of ask the question as to how can you create a framework that's more equitable, which will keep women, which will not only, where you don't have diversity just at the hiring stage in terms of fulfilling a certain number of jobs with women, but actually creating frameworks that keep more women in the field at PI positions and so forth, So how do you make that happen? And it'll be interesting to see what, all of you have to say on that.
So I think I've had the good fortune of being at multiple institutions where I have female role models. So when I was doing my master's, I had people like Uma, Vidya, Divya Mudapa, Ghazala, all of you came and, gave us talks, and, we knew that there's something out there that one can look forward to. And it's not like, oh, you're just doing this while you're in your early 20s and then please become serious with your life. I think that way, for me, that was definitely the feeling that there is something out there. And even now, I feel I am at an institution now where until recently, our vice chancellor was female. We have deans who are female. And I think it has made a huge difference in terms of both being able to approach people with problems as well as them understanding what the problems are and finding, creative solutions for this and being flexible about things. So I think that itself, like having women in those leadership positions, really paves the way for other women to come up there.
But what about institutional frameworks? What about policies? We have acts like POSCO, but we all know that all of that is in the implementation of things. So do things need to change at wildlife institutional levels?
I think definitely. I think all these serious matters like sexual harassment and, are still brushed under the carpet even by other women. So I don't know how to change that. But I would just like to say that even talking about periods, I remember last year there was this young girl at an interview and, there was 2 men in the panel and the guy asked her do you have any health issues? And she's yeah, I have terrible times during my periods. And I could just like see that stiffening because I was like, go for it, girl. Yes, say it more. And I think that's it. Like, yes, we have periods. I mean, that's why we are all born, and I think, and that, I mean, jokes apart, it is for some, like, I never had a problem. So I could cycle, I could do what, but I have a daughter who's like, she just gets crippled. And I initially thought, okay, she's just making a fuss. I mean, that's where I come from. But then you look around and you realize there's so many women who just have physiological problems dealing with it. And I think it's totally okay for the younger ones to tell whichever gender is out there or whichever person who doesn't believe in it that, yeah, it is a problem. So I think, like, all I'm trying to say, I guess, is that it is okay to go out there and state that you have a problem, even if you feel people will not believe you or laugh at you. I think you should do it more and more. Because all of us.
I think daycare is really. Go ahead. I think daycare is really important, especially if you do have a family, because it's open every day. Like, daycare is open every day, from time A to time B. So you can rely on it. And I think one of the things, at least when I started my job and I had young children, just that uncertainty, will you be able to do something today, right, is something which it helps to have support like that. Because not everybody can have family support. I mean, of course, it's great to have a wonderful family and all that stuff, but not everybody can have that. And that should not be a prerequisite. It almost is like a prerequisite in India that you have to have a supportive family,
Hum saath saath hai types.
Yeah. So I just think that having systems like that really would help.
I think that's when you see the value, right? I mean, I think if you look at IT companies and the lens to which they went to make those jobs attractive to women, I think this community will also have to signal that they see value in having women come into the workplace, and having daycare is a damn good place to start. Yeah.
What I would like to add is the impression that I get from speaking to a lot of my male colleagues and acquaintances is that women in the field is still considered as an exception than the norm. And like the measure...
In reality or in their minds?
I don't know. It's very frustrating because certain things that need to be put in place to make the workplace conducive is considered as an extra. It's considered as a burden. It should be normal and weaved into the cultural fabric of the organization. It should be the new normal. I mean, it shouldn't be made to feel like they're doing us a favor and most importantly, stop underestimating women. That's the basic thing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say this now because I was asked this question when we're all women on stage and why not having a man here? And I said, and I think Vidya and I had this conversation, and it's in the context of what Purva was saying. She said, don't you think we should have at least one man here? And while I'm very happy that there are a couple of men who wrote brilliant chapters in the book, including the Anandu who wrote on Vidya, and I said, no, I don't think enough men's panels do tokenism by inviting the one woman. I said we shall not display tokenism and not invite any men, and we shall go all out for women. So yeah, so that is just an aside. But I think okay, somebody else wanted to say. No, I think and going from there onward, I think the question that I really want to ask is that. Given that we are demanding equality, given that we're saying that we should be given equal opportunity, there should be frameworks that enable us to work freely in the field, in the lab, wherever that we want to. Do women also overplay the gender card? I know it's not a really popular question to ask an all-women panel maybe, but I think it's an important question that I think, unlike men who may not want to question themselves, we shall self-introspect and we shall put the thing out there. So, do we not play the gender, should we not overplay the gender card, and are we making too much of, being women in the field? And does that question itself raise issues around the notion of equality? So, clearly it's an unpopular question, so.
Can I say something? Yeah. So I think it's, like we discussed earlier, it's very patchy. You see a lot of institutions trying their best to, make the workplace an inclusive place for women and, trying to get in more diversity as well. Even amongst women, there are underprivileged groups, and I wanted to kind of emphasize that there are underprivileged groups, there are marginalized communities, and I think that as women, we need to make that special effort to bring in such people on board as well. It needs a lot for a person from an underprivileged community who doesn't know English, very well, to come in and try to do wildlife. So I think that as women, we also need to create that space for people who are hesitant and who would like to get extra mentorship, or either from men or women. So I think it's not overplayed. I think it's a serious. I actually feel that in the last decade or so, or maybe before that, we are, the government, I'm repeating myself, but I do feel that we are moving a little backward. When we saw the Chandrayaan example, a lot of the work was done by women. But who is at the top? I mean, why don't the accomplished women scientists get those positions like secretary in Department of... You'll never see a woman in those high positions, decision-making roles. So I think there needs to be a bit of affirmative action. There needs to be a lot more mentorship from our side as more senior women scientists towards marginalized peoples as well. And we need to look at what's happening in the larger country perspective. And I don't think that biologists are having a different experience from what's going on in the larger field of science as well. It's just a reflection of society. So, whatever's going on in physics and chemistry is also happening in wildlife biology.
So this is completely my perspective, so please take it that way. I think that anyone who is in a minority, as someone, I've switched from being supermajority to minority in various walks in life. And I feel like when you're in a minority, you don't really want to draw attention to yourself in general. So I think that saying that, it's like saying that, oh, there must be so many malicious sexual harassment complaints. I don't think people who are harassed really want to complain. They really fight and really have to summon up a lot of courage to do it. So I think that playing the gender card, I feel like it kind of defeats the purpose. I mean, I think, I don't know. I think generally, if you are in a minority, you will just really work hard and try to shine on your own rather than, invoke something to help you do that.
Yeah, as women, we definitely need to stand up to, the problems, patriarchy or sexism, and, we need to stand up for that. But at the same time, we need to be careful about not using the gender card to leverage our position or to get away with things. So I think we need to be really careful about certain things, and we need to be responsible. So, yeah, I believe.
I think those are all, really good points in terms of the fact that we are a minority in a sense that, and we are dealing with these issues, and it's not, it's going to be hard to make a complaint of sexual harassment against anyone. And I think we've seen that. The recent struggles in the last few months have underscored how difficult it is for women to speak out. But once people started speaking out, I think there was a lot more stuff that where the carpet was pulled off, and the ugly truth below was rather sadly revealed. So I thought that, this would be a good point to perhaps throw the floor open to questions. And I think we've covered a lot of different themes and ideas around women in wildlife. So now I guess if you will extend the discussion to the audience, and maybe people would like to throw some other perspective on some of the things we've discussed here today.
Thank you for having my question. I wanted to ask if, you people being very experienced and the best of the best, what are some advices you have for someone who is looking to join the field of wildlife conservation, as an undergraduate, or someone who's very new to the field and wants to pursue that as a career in the future?
Why me? I guess for my experience, it is just believe in yourself. That is all. Yeah, and just work hard. And I also think we could do with a lot of humility, because we often, as wildlife biologists, go in with preconceived ideas and notions. So it really, really helps if you go in to learn rather trying to go in to change. So that is all. All the best.
I'd like to introduce myself. I've been a software professional for 20 years. I quit my job to join the wildlife research group because I was always passionate about wildlife. As Uma said, you do a lot of things and then end up coming here, where your heart goes. So this mentorship thing that you're talking about, I really want you to think seriously about it, because for the past 3 years, I've been running around in circles, trying to find someone to help me, because I have this drive, I have the funds, I have the interest, passion, energy, everything. But what lacks is that mentorship, I think you women who've been there, who've seen so much of experience, if I'm finding it so difficult, I'm sure a lot of other people also would be finding it very difficult. So I think you should have a forum or something where, people can put their questions or ask their questions or how to do. I thought, okay, I don't have the knowledge, so I did my MSc and everything. But still, I do need some kind of advice. So I would appeal to you to, kind of have some thing. So any of you... Do you mean advice about opportunities and conservation? As she said, a year, anything. She said, you need to have a mentor whom you're able to reach out for anything. That way, because I don't belong to an institution, I don't have a PI or a mentor or a lecturer. I'm outside, like Uma said, an independent researcher. So then whom do I reach out to? So, seriously, I think you guys can do a great, you can build a lot of gap by, being approachable to any questions or, any kind of help. Would you seriously think about it?
I think...
Answer carefully, I'm going to reach out to you.
Yeah, sure. I think most of us here have been pretty open to people coming from different walks of life and, volunteering in programs and then even doing research, paid research and things like that. So I think you should feel free to, go to websites, see what people are doing, what is it that you want to do, read up on that, and then contact anybody, and all the women here and in the audience as well who are, wildlife scientists would be happy to chat and, help you find your particular vocation that, within the area of wildlife biology or conservation that you would be interested in. But you have to do your own bit by reading enough, finding out who's doing what, perhaps visiting some field sites or labs to see what's going on, and then see what you would like to do, right?
Yeah.
And conferences like
Conferences,
CCS, which is happening next week.
UB conference
Exactly.
in Calcutta also, and that's the reason why I'm here, so that I could
So feel
meet
free
people.
to go up to anybody, email them, and write. I think that almost everybody I know does reply to emails or, visits, so on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
And I just wanted to add to that I think it's also like an example of how few women there are, that we don't have perhaps enough of a quorum to set up like a system in place for people like this. At this point, I think we are few enough of us that it just happens on a one-to-one basis. And definitely that's a symptom that we need more women.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. My question is picking up on two nuances that you mentioned. One was, the spotting of a leopard and actually in grasslands and where people live, and also what you mentioned about, studying fishing communities and that also stemming from fisher folk in very urban settings. So I was just curious to know whether in Bangalore or anywhere in the rest of India, have you all come across, this kind of more conscious decision on on behalf of city planning departments or municipalities to take into account wildlife within either urban or rural settings, and actually to begin planning cities or even suburbs? I know in Bangalore, like parks, etc., are accounted for, but is there a more conscious effort to really look at what climate change goals can we achieve through more hyper-localized planning, taking into account local flower species, fruit, or pollinators? I'd love to know.
So, sorry, I always talk too much. But I think that's a really excellent point. And, we know that India is urbanizing very rapidly, right? A large proportion of India, a lot of people in India will live in urban centers. And understanding the distribution of biodiversity in these urban centers is really important. Unfortunately, I think, and again, my perspective, I think there's a really big gap between science and action. Policy is even further down the line, management, action. And that's because of a gap between the people who are actually implementing like this city planning, right? And also the science or the data. So I think there needs to be much more dialogue. So in some sense, this book is about individual journeys, right? Which are motivated by passion and stuff like that. And that's really cool. But then also, someone said, as an undergraduate interested in wildlife, I think this is the biggest crisis of our time. We need to understand what to do about biodiversity. And I think that many new kind of ways of thinking about melding these different professions, more interdisciplinary approaches would be really important.
Can I say something? I think I would even take a step back. I don't even know if they think about us humans, because there are no pedestrian spaces for people to walk. Forget wildlife, yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think, in terms of government, we see it as this kind of monolithic thing that is performing actions in a particular direction, when in fact there are multiple departments doing multiple things, often at cross purposes. So, like, I know, for instance, in Chennai, there is some planning commission, and they are trying to plan the city and do urban planning. But there's also the metro works, and there's also all these other departments that are doing things in exactly the opposite direction. So what eventually results is some mishmash of that whole thing.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, I just first wanted to say, Anita, congrats and thanks for doing this, for the imprint, and especially for bringing these marvelous stories of powerful, very pioneering women together. So congratulations. Number 2, all of you need to, like Zai has, write for children more right now. Don't wait. Children need to hear your stories. Please write, because you have the most fascinating stories, not only because you're women in the field, but the subject lends itself to so much adventure and fun for children to inspire them. But my question is really this. We need to have many more women wildlife biologists, and they are coming. What kind of technologies, if they were brought into institutions, would make it more possible for more women to come into this field? Like today, there are so many technologies, like for example, in the software industry, because of the nature of the work, many more women were able to come in. What are the things you see in wildlife biology, in emerging technologies, say sensor, it could be anything, that may make more women come into the field? Because we surely need more. Any thoughts?
Yeah.
So coming to technology, so because I work in cave habitats, and they're often isolated and no networks. For example, now I'm working on an island, on a sea cave. There is no network there. So even if I try to bring a real-time camera trapping or anything else, but if there is no network, some of the technologies won't work. And then I personally have to sit there and collect the data. So, this, like Uma also said, this takes passion. Passion with technology will give you results. But if there's no passion, yeah. So when I was working in Andamans, I faced the same issue. We never had a phone network. I couldn't call my parents for like a month. But then, yeah, technology couldn't help. So at that time, human resource and passion, yeah, that all works. But what I've seen is the young researchers, they're very passionate about this field, and people want to actually go out of network nowadays. what I've seen. So, I mean, technology shouldn't stop these things. And yeah, there are lots of passionate women out there.
I wish to state that that the educational departments in various states, whether it's at the university level or school level, even primary school level, they should introduce wildlife as a subject and make it more lucrative for them, let them understand what nature is. Nature, we are actually using, playing with nature. That's what I got from a book which I read from the publication department. So I feel children should be taught how to be kind to wildlife, or they should be given it should be taken as a subject, and even at the postgraduate level. Thank you.
So can I respond to that? Yeah, so I think that's definitely something that we are seeing more, that there is this complete lack of connection, especially between children and the environment around them. I have had the fortune of working with some school children in government schools, and was horrified to learn that even in a coastal city like Chennai, many of these kids have never even seen the beach. And to take them to this kind of an outdoor space and introduce them to the world that is basically their neighborhood, that was the thing that was most inspiring. I mean, it's one thing to go into their classroom and give them really boring lectures, but to actually take them out and take them into that space, I think was way more important. But that also coming to this question about technology, it's this outdoor space, it's this connection with nature that a lot of people come into this field looking for. And if we are then sort of forced to look at it through the lens of technology, for instance, using the marine example, if one has to go and place like video cameras underwater to capture what's happening there, to a certain extent, it kind of drives away that passion when you have to come back and look at hours and hours of videos of almost nothing. So a lot of people actually kind of get disillusioned through the use of technology, because that's not the reason they came into the field in the first place. So I think there's some kind of balance that we have to achieve there between like nurturing the passion and still being more practical and using technology.
Sorry, can I quickly add to an answer about technology? I think even now when I'm speaking to young women who want to join this field and want to work on projects that I'm involved in, one of the questions I get asked is, will I be traveling to remote field locations? How safe is it? Will I be alone? And I think technology that can help improve women's safety would be a big one. So, you know, it not just necessarily because you're a woman, but also you're in places where you don't necessarily have access to medical support. You could be bitten by a snake in a remote site. Like, it doesn't have to be gender specific, but something about safety, I'm sure, would make it easier for more women to access a field like this. And I just wanted to add that. And quickly, one more thing. So we've been talking about the disadvantages of being a minority in this field. But there's a social belief that being women also adds a certain empathy and a different way of looking at complex problems. So some fields tend to have inherently more women for those reasons. And I wonder whether conservation, which is such a complex field that requires so much empathy, would be something that would actually do better, and as women we could actually do more because of that inherent nature.
Thanks, Vishnu. I think that great answer and a great question. And I think, I'm glad she picked up that second point, because that's something that I felt very strongly when I was editing all the pieces, that there was a strong strain of empathy that ran through every piece. And I think in some cases, a lot of the women who were profiled wanted to include their team members' names in the copy. And I remember pushing back, saying, like, look, we can't keep listing names because we're running out of words and we're not talking about these people. So it's very superficial. They said, no, but we need to know that, I think the world needs to know this is not me doing it, it's we doing it, it's a team effort. And that sort of symbolizes, I think, what women in the field can do very differently. And I think it's absolutely true that there is a strong intuitive way in which women work more cooperatively, and more power to that. Sorry for that interjection.
Good evening, all the members, and congratulations to you all for your wonderful book. And especially Dhanusha, we discuss many things on phone, but actually that never turns out anything. But now let me introduce myself first. I'm a forensic research scholar. So I am exploring, right now I'm working with microorganisms, okay? So I was wondering, can we explore this microorganism field in preserving the wildlife? Apart from that, barcoding, DNA barcoding, even microbial barcoding. So that will help us in, stopping the crimes that are related to illegal trading and illegal killing. Even for the sports, people kill the wildlife. So can we, with the help of drone forensics, there are so many technologies that are happening right now, including DNA barcoding. So can we explore that opportunity with you all, like me as an individual researcher?
I can answer that. Sorry, again, I'm talking too much. But so there are, of course, there's a lot of, first of all, I maybe very quickly give again my perspective on microbes are really important for many things. And we're learning more and more that in like human health, the microbiome, we have so many more bacteria in us than even cells, right? So the microbial signatures are very important. And in fields like even restoration now, there's a huge discussion about soil health. And, how do you know whether the soil actually drives a lot of regeneration and so many things, and maybe monitoring soil health through microbial diversity can help you do better restoration, for example. So actually kind of pulling on all those threads, empathy, technology, I actually think that kind of collaborative teams, interdisciplinary teams, maybe that's one way to be inclusive of different kinds of skill sets, different kinds of people, women, underprivileged minorities, or whatever label you want to put. And I think that microbes ignored compared to large charismatic vertebrates, they may also feel the same.
I remember that one of you was talking about genetics in the wildlife field. So yes, DNA barcoding we can use to track the movement.
So
even to track the reproduction and all.
Of course, Yes. So basically, I think interdisciplinary approaches like genetics can be used to deconstruct natural history, not just wonder at it, but understand it in some sense quantitatively and a little bit more deeply. And these technologies are changing rapidly to include many other things like microbes.
The area of science and sociology more and more, right? Because of community.
Good evening. I'm really excited to be here. I'm having so much fun with this discussion. So I had a question about one of the charismatic vertebrates, as you called it. Maybe a slightly politically charged question, but I wanted you guys' opinion on the recent Kuno situation on the cheetahs. And I wanted to, I was wondering what your guys' opinion on it.
Should we? Maybe we...
You can have like a whole day discussion with Dr. Ravi Chellam, who's sitting there in the corner. Unless somebody here wants to say.
No, after that prelude, no. After that prelude, nobody will want to say it. But this can be a purely, like I say, peer-to-peer learning, can be audience-to-audience discussion as well. If anybody would like to answer that question.
I can say. So I'm not being flippant, really. I think he does know a lot more about the issue than any of us. So it would be worth everybody's time, and you will probably learn a lot more. But Ghazala wants to say something.
Well, wasn't here. So it's definitely very politically charged, but I shoot my mouth off everywhere, so I don't really care. But yeah, I think that for every ecologist or every biologist that's out there, it's, everything is out there for you to read, understand. There's a lot that's gone wrong. There are issues that haven't been taken care of. There are people who differ in their opinion, but I think that what would be the right thing to do is to read everything that is available out there. Unfortunately, right now, there are a lot of opinion pieces out there. There's not enough data, except what is being put out in press releases. But even based on that, you can see that the project seems to have been a failure so far and could have been done better. Some people feel it should not have been done at all. So there are a lot of problems. And I don't think we should look at it as like a problem in itself. I think it's a lot to do with the governance, with governance issues, with policy issues. How do we do science in this country? How do we do conservation in this country? I think that's the more important question, rather than whether we should have got cheetahs at all, how were they looked after, and things like that. I think we should look at the deeper issues of how we use science for conservation in the country. And I think every young person here should grapple with that, whether it's the cheetah or the urban trees or the climate change issues in the cities. There's a lot of science out there that needs to be looked at and data to be collected. And unfortunately, we're not doing enough of that. There are government institutes out there whose main mandate is to collect data. They're not doing that. And there are a whole lot of us here who are doing it for free. So there's a bit of an imbalance there. So yeah, we have to look at it in a larger perspective.
Thank you. Hello. First of all, it's great to see all of you on the same stage. So I'm relatively new to this field. I started my journey around 7 months back. So I've started fieldwork recently, and I had questions about how easy or difficult was it for you guys to deal with the logistical issues that you face at the field. As Dr. Vidya said, that some women have physical constraints as well. Like I have PCOS. And right now I'm working with elephants. And 2 weeks back, I was in the field and I was on my periods as well. And I was so exhausted at a point, I thought if an elephant comes chasing towards me, I'm just going to let it trample. So that's the kind of physical exhaustion. Plus, I am not from Karnataka. So I don't know any Kannada. So whenever I go to the field, I am always accompanied by forest guards who are males. The person who drives us around the forest is also a male. So initially it was very difficult for me to communicate to them if I wanted to pee. Or even even if I was hungry, it was very difficult for me to communicate it with them. So did you guys also deal with such problems, and how did you handle those?
But I think, but it's a good question and deserves, I think, an answer. So
I could take it. So I think starting out by not thinking of them as different helps. And they're usually very empathetic if, I don't know, that's been my feeling overall. And if they're not nice people, then you'll have to just figure out a way to kind of deal with that situation. But most people out there are happy to help. If I need to use the loo, I just tell them bathroom and I go and they go ahead. You just say what you have to say and you do what you have to do. So, but I think more than anything, you should really take care of yourself, because it's okay to take a break if you're not feeling good that day. You can read at the field station. So, yeah, but I think, so for me, the most enjoyable time of my work was actually working on ground with people, because I'm not a very social person, but it's rural India and people are just amazing. And you just have to give them an opportunity to do that. Many times we don't, because of where we come from, our egos, and but when you let all that disappear, people all over India, I find, I haven't been to some states in the middle, but everywhere else, I have had a great experience. So it's just about, finding your groove and going on with it. Yeah.
And also learn.
Start.
But I'll just add, I think working in teams is really good. You know, when you have a team of people, 3 or 4 people, if that's possible, that's really nice. And like I agree with Vidya, I think you should just say what you feel like. I mean, when you're in the field, it's a very, like you're sharing everything, right? You're living in that place. It's a very different thing from having a job where you go in and you come back to your own space. So you have to kind of just be honest and share whatever your needs are.
I think what I would like to say is that, you say share the challenges, but at the moment, I can only think of the amazing experiences and relationships that I've built by being in the field. And I'm not a scientist, so I was always tagging along with somebody else, but we were in the field. And as you were saying, that social atmosphere, the opportunities to get to know people you would never have the opportunity to know otherwise is just so precious. So there are challenges, but the benefits are just huge. Yeah.
I would just like to say one thing, that don't try to please everybody. If something is not right, I think it's very important that because otherwise it can not be safe for you as well. Yeah.
So, sorry. So this is just about the physical constraint you were talking about. So what I will, suggest from my own experiences is that just to, please, like Vidya said, or just to prove ourselves, we often keep abusing our physical body. Okay, we are on period, so we have to, it becomes a compulsion ki nahi karke dikhana hai. Means kuch bhi ho jaye, karke dikhayenge. So that shouldn't be there. If you keep on doing this every time, it will take on your mental health also. I don't know, we just missed out this mental health issue over here. Yeah. But if you keep on neglecting your body, it can take you to depression. And what you lose is you lose a lot of time on field. And then the data collection will not happen on time and everything. So if you need rest, just be open. 4 days I'm just going to lie down and sleep and watch Netflix, do anything on my field station.
It's not just a gender thing.
Yeah, it's not a gender thing, not at all. Yeah, if a male subordinate is not well, we shouldn't push our body to an extreme. Yeah.
I said I've never seen a man apologize for that ever. So yeah, so the very fact that she's asking her question itself is, I think, very telling in this case.
I wanted to add something about the logistics. I've worked mostly with undergraduate and master's students, and I think it's a very important period in a wildlife biologist's life. That's the time that they'll really decide what they like to do, whether the field experience is for them or not, field work is for them or not. For some people, it's not the right choice, So I think at this time of their lives, what I often do is to put, especially for women, I think one of the questioners here said that, you're sending people to these remote places, you feel responsible for them, right? And it is a challenge. And every single woman student, I have second thoughts. Should I send her or not, or should I take a male student for this project? It's always... And I'm guilty that some of these places I've actually sent male students because I felt that it wouldn't be safe enough for women. But one of the things strategies I've adopted is that I pair up a couple of, female students to go to a remote location together. And then they do different projects, but in the same general field site. And at the master's level, it doesn't matter. You're there for 4 months. You do your project together, but you have a wonderful experience because you feel safe with each other. So I think these small teams can be made, and the people can kind of have each other's back then.
Yeah, and I just want to add also, like Dhanusha was saying, don't be too tough on yourself, because you can always find something else to do that still contributes to the wildlife field. For example, I'm terrible at climbing hills. I've always been very bad at climbing hills. And my first experience was interning with Divya Mudappa, who made me plant something on hills, and I just suffered through that, and I knew that that's not what I'm going to be able to do. But I still found something else that I could do. So you can always look at alternatives.
Hello, good evening, everyone. So, I'm Navika Singhania. Just a bit about myself because it's related to the question that I'm going to ask. I hail from a tea garden in Assam, and for an instance, I have seen that human-wildlife conflict and climate change is real because I've seen it from my own eyes. What the tea industry was 10 years back is not what it is now. And on a similar ground, I've seen during, when we were going to give relief for the floods in Assam, I literally saw a rhino charging at us because it was trying to cross the roads. When I was learning driving when I was at home, and a wild elephant charged at my car, and I was on my 5th day of learning driving. And I've seen a leopard hit with a poisoned arrow because the tea gardeners, the laborers in the tea garden, they were just trying to it was like a defense mechanism, but we still don't know where the poisoned arrow came from and how did they know that there is a leopard in the periphery. So these have been instances in my life since childhood. So I think that's where the innate passion for conservation came from. But I ended up studying business and management because my family background was that. So my question is, what advice would you give to someone who's done her undergrad and postgrad not in this field and has come from a totally different background but is really passionate about conservation, especially when it comes to rhino conservation in Kaziranga, because I've been born and brought up there. So that's my question.
I think we're just so stunned because you've obviously been through so much, and I think through your own journey, I think you've answered your own question, right? I mean, because you know what you want to do, and I think that's sometimes 3/4 of the battle. So and now it's only a question of tactical of how do I get there rather than what I want to do. So I would suggest that you should probably chat with any of these women offline and get some ideas on how you could actually move that forward. I mean, that's what I would think, because this is a detailed question specific to you, which I think you much more fruitful if you got. But if anyone here wants to weigh in with a more general response, please go ahead. Yeah. So I think they all will have oodles of information to share with you on this one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll just take one last question, and I think we will call it a day after that. So if you would, yeah.
Okay, I'd like to first add that I think that this panel was, it felt like a very safe and approachable panel, so thank you for that. So I'm a media student and I'm doing my undergraduation, and as a media student, I've been thinking that media in general does not, as much as it could, does not cover issues such as climate change and conservation with the urgency I think it requires. So my question to you as conservationist, for the panel in general, is what do you think, how do you think, what are the main issues that can be covered, should be covered, and how do you think the urgency should be dealt with? If it's like a media house. And I know that there are a lot of policies and politics.
In my opinion.
No, I think there are so many issues that need to be talked about. I am, for one thing, personally, I'm passionate about talking about the exotic pet trade crisis that is currently, that we see in India in the past, especially in the past recent years. And so there are, I don't think there is just one issue that, there's human-wildlife conflict and air pollution and yeah, encroachment, and so I don't see how.
So not issues in general, but I think the urgency that I think media has to deal with. I wanted just I wanted to know your say on it as conservationists, like how the urgency can be dealt with.
If I can just be allowed to rephrase your question and ask at least anybody on the panel, if they were the editor of a major newspaper, what would they like to see on page 1 in font 52 so nobody can miss it? So I'd really like all of you to have a go at it and be wildly creative. And what's not, yeah, what would, yeah.
I can respond a little bit on that. I think media is one of the most important stakeholders for bringing about change. And I think it is our responsibility then as a community to try and engage with the media so that they do find what we find important to report. And I think it's just this lack of trying to engage with them, not for any other reason, but it's a lot of effort. But I think it's a very important thing that few people have started doing. Yeah.
So I also engage with journalists quite a bit on several issues. And I find that a lot of journalists, either they don't have the time, but they don't make the effort to really understand an issue in all its complexity, and also look at the data which is available or not. A lot of people write about these issues in a kind of a doomsday, approach, and that creates a lot of fear in people as well. I think journalists need to engage with the data, and they need to be careful about how they write about many of these issues, and take the time to understand. And I'd really like to say that mongabay.in, I don't know if anybody from that journal is here, but they really take the trouble to refer to a large number of sources. They will talk to several scientists about an issue before this. So often you see kind of erroneous message going across. Yeah, so just wanted to flag that.
Lastly,
just one more point is, I would really like to see more journalists kind of engaging with decision makers. They are the ones who have the responsibility. They are the ones who say yes to incredibly stupid projects, which are just destroying the little forest and water bodies that we have. And, people like me, we keep writing for children. Actually, there was a sweet little guy a few months ago at the Croc Bank, and he said, "Auntie, but what can I do, It's the policy makers that we have to address." So I think that would be a really nice slant to, journalism from somebody like you, is that, what can the officials, the politicians do? They have tremendous power in their hands, and we're at their mercy. So, I'd like to see more sort of journalistic drive go in that direction.
Okay. Because my research is, I think my research mostly emphasizes that how the onus of issues like this falls on media in general. Like you said, it's a very important tool. I just wanted to know if at all you have been approached by journalists, or if you think that there is proper coverage of these issues by media houses in general.
I think as some of them have said, they have engaged. So I think there is coverage, and I think maybe we should probably take the conversation offline and find out more. It'll probably be far more useful, I think, as a way to do. So
thank you so much.
I think we'll call time on the Q&A, and since I'm the moderator, I get to have the last word, and I'm going to take advantage of that to read, I think, what was for me the most important passage that I wrote in the introduction. So please bear with me for a few minutes. Women field biologists themselves have not let the ugly truth pull them down. Field by field, ridge by ridge, forest to shore, the glass ceiling is feeling the pressure. As more women take leadership positions in wildlife biology, there is optimism that change will come. It seems right then, to quote Divya Mudappa, albeit from a different context, yet fitting here when she says, "We are conservationists who fly on hope." I'd like to end this evening by saying that this book is no archive of the glories past, but a fanfare of what is yet to come for women in the wild. Thank you.